Hey YouTube, when I asked you what you wanted to see this week, a lot of you said stuff on team building, and I already have a team building series that I did back in the day where it kind of goes over a couple team examples with like ABB style teams, ABA teams, all balanced teams, stuff like that. So there's a whole team building set strategy on that, so you can go check those out. Again, those videos are very old, so what I'm going to do in this video is kind of go over those like new teams that I've used from the last year that kind of fit those team builds, plus a couple other team builds that I did not cover back in the day, such as like if you wanted to use like one bulky Pokemon with two glass cannons or one glass cannon with two bulky Pokemon. So I got a couple examples of those. But before we can go into like the different types of teams and why they work and how to use them, what you need to do is understand the rule of every single Pokemon, right? Because you can look at the screen here and just be like, okay, there's a bunch of Pokemon. Can I theoretically put Lickitung, Cresselia, Gligar together? And to a certain extent, yes. And I will show you exactly what I mean when I put my, like, I call them everything teams, which is just like three very safe Pokemon that can kind of deal with everything. So I'll go over that in a minute. But if you want to try and figure out, okay, what is the strength and weakness of every Pokemon? What Pokemon need shields? What Pokemon don't need shields? What Pokemon are good? Are the glass cannons? What Pokemon are the ones who absorb damage? The first thing is you can do is, if you want to take the long method, is you just go one by one on all these Pokemon, right? You can just go down to their stat products and be like, okay, I know Cress is tanky. Anything that has this like low attack, high defense and stamina, 2400, something like that, you know they fit the bill of bulky Pokemon that generally don't need shields that you can potentially use as shields. So Azumarill's one, same sort of thing. You're going to get that super low attack. Generally, the rule of thumb is like, if they have under 100 attack, but a well over 2000 stat product, they generally fit the bill of like a bulky Pokemon that you can potentially use as a sponge to absorb that. So there's that there. Cress, even I think like Medi kind of fits the bill. Like it has a slightly higher attack and a slightly lower defense, so it's not like the true like that, but Medi is kind of tanky. So those are the Pokemon that so you can just go like look at stat products. It's tough to look at stat products for 100 Pokemon plus. So if you go to PvPoke, they have categories: leads, closers, switches, chargers, attackers, consistency, and then you can go by stat product. The only problem is you can organize by stats. It's not useful, right? Because if you organize by stamina, you're going to get Pokemon that you just won't use in this meta, right? Chansey, Blissey, Wailmer, stuff like that. And then same thing with defense. Like you're just going to get some of these Pokemon are for sure usable: Carbink, Bastiodon, Toxapex, Defenseoxys. But then you get like Onix, Probopass, Dusclops, unless you're in like a limited meta. Like a lot of these Pokemon aren't going to be very usable. And the attack heavy Pokemon, you can truly get your like glass cannons here. But again, these aren't very usable because their attack stat products is offset by just how bad they are in their defense and their stamina. So I think and this is overall stat product, same sort of thing. You have the problem of like you're just gonna get some chances and Blissies in here. So I think there's a couple things in here that you can actually organize for. Most of these other ones I think are very useful. So in terms of leads, so the best Pokemon with shields in play, capable of applying pressure or winning extended fights, their ideal leads to battle. So these are Pokemon that have one of two things. They're either very bulky, and between their bulk and shield advantage, you can just kind of stay in a long time, spam a lot of charge moves, or they're Pokemon with very limited weaknesses and are more glass cannons like Swampert. So Gligar, same thing. Gligar, there's going to be some things like ice and stuff you just got to get out of, but like Gligar, even against like water Pokemon, which you're weak to, generally you can stay in with pretty much everything. Swampert, not only weak, I mean, your only weakness that you take is grass. You're going to do bad against dragons, which resist. You're going to do bad against, what else resist besides grass and dragon? I'm sure there's other things that water resists. Other water Pokemon, right? Other water Pokemon are going to cause you a bit of trouble. But outside that, any neutral matchup, Swampert just with like shields and the Hydro Cannon spam is like a great lead. I love using Swampert on the lead. And then saying Quagsire, if you watched my video earlier this season, I said Quagsire for that exact same reason. Like Swampert, fits the bill. You have Stone Edge for your flyer coverage. You have Mud Bomb for everything else. You're spammy. You are kind of sneaky bulk. You only have that one real grass weakness. So a lot of these Pokemon on the lead are definitely Pokemon that I would use in this meta. Closers are a little one that they have some play in this meta, but a lot of these I would kind of shy away from, just because the definition is the best Pokemon with no shields in play. So it's bulk or hard-hitting moves allow them to close the matchups, right? So there's a very big difference there. There's a big difference between Registeel, which has bulk and nukes, and Excadrill, which, yes, very, very spammy with the Drill Run and Rock Slide, but is so glassy and very, very limited in the meta. You'd rather probably have like Galarian Stunfisk or something else as opposed to Excadrill. So I don't love the closer list, but you can just get an idea of like what Pokemon shields down would be good. I think Switches is the one that is always accurate. And look at this top 6 list, and I'll even go down to top 10. Lickitung, Gligar, Cresselia, Vigoroth, Poliwrath, Sableye, Walrein, Annihilate, Gliscor, and Gligar again, and then Greedent at 11. Yes, 100. All of those are 100% safe swaps in this meta. Walrein used to be a better safe swap, not as much anymore with all the fighters and all the like lanterns running around, so it's a little weaker than it used to be. But the rest of those 100% could be used as safe swaps. It's the best Pokemon to switch in from an unfavorable lead. They're safe and can pressure shield or deal heavy damage, even in their losses. So a lot of the teams that I will build will have like balanced teams. You will see all these Pokemon as safe swaps, or on some teams where I just put like together, like throw 3 of the best Pokemon together that are generally safe. I remember, I think it's Gligar, Poliwrath, and one of these others as a third, Lickitung, I think it was. Put them together and throw them in, and it's generally a safe team because it gives you some bulk, it gives you some hard hittingness, allows you to jump around, stuff like that. So it's a good overall way to build just with like strong switches. Chargers are the ones that I would generally call the glass cannons here. Right, so it's the best Pokemon with an energy advantage. So fast energy gain or powerful moves makes them dangerous after building up energy. So basically these are what I consider sort of glass cannons where you likely need shields for them, but they're very, very strong in this meta. Poliwrath, Swampert, Annihilate, Sneasler, Shadow Charizard, Togedemaru, Pelipper, Whiscash, Dragonite. So these are Pokemon that are not the tankiest. Some are a little tankier than others, like Annihilate and Poliwrath are not bad, and Whiscash is pretty good, but like obviously Swampert and Charizard and Togedemaru, and Dragonite, they're very, very glassy for the Great League. But they generally charge fast and hit so hard. If you see me use Togedemaru just wild charging things left, right, and center, and Charizard with Blast Burn that joke that everyone always makes is Charizard doesn't really have weaknesses because even a Shadow Blast Burn does like 50% to water plus, right? So that is generally the charger. So if you're going to build, and you're going to see on my team here, if you're going to build a team that has 1 or 2 glass Pokemon hiding behind 1 to 2 bulky Pokemon, these are the glass Pokemon that you're using, right? These are your glass cannons. Swampert, Charizard are on one of my teams with a bulky Pokemon, where it's just like use your shields on these Pokemon and use your other Pokemon as kind of third shields is how I would explain that. You can go to attackers. So this attackers is defined here as the best Pokemon against shielded opponents when unshielded. So it's kind of a tricky name because you attackers. When I hear the word attackers, I think of what you saw under the Chargers. I would assume attackers are like those glass cannon Pokemon that can really do damage. But the definition here of attackers is the best Pokemon against shielded opponents when unshielded. So basically what they're saying is Pokemon that are bulky, right? Their natural bulk resistances and strong attacks allow them to power through a disadvantage. So these are the Pokemon that if you can get either in a good matchup or if you just need to like, if you're down shields, these are the Pokemon that you kind of want in there. And you're going to see a lot of just very, very bulky Pokemon. Bastion, Cresselia, Registeel, Mandibuzz, Azumarill, Lantern. So when I remember why I said you can just go check the stat products of everything, look at that lower attack with 200 plus, 2,000 overall, right? There's Bastiodon. There's Mandibuzz, 92, 2,000 overall. Like these are the Pokemon that fit the bill. Mantine, Lickitung, Toxapex, yeah, same thing. These are the Pokemon that fit the bill of using as third shield. So it's funny that they're called attackers on PvPoke, but I would call these as like your third shields. There's also one for consistency. And these are the most dependable. They provide consistent damage and rely less on baiting than other Pokemon. And if you look at the list here, it's a lot of fast move damage Pokemon. And that's the thing with the consistency. Like, Swampert is good when you can spam a bunch of Hydro Cannons. But these Pokemon don't rely on their charge move, like Bastion with Smackdown, Dragonair with Dragon Breath, any counter user, right? Surfetched and Hitmontop. Dugong is on this list because Ice Shard, it doesn't fit the same bill as this, but bulky Pokemon, generally fast, and Icy Wind Drill Run with just good coverage. Your Charm users are on here. Again, a lot of counter users. So these Pokemon, I wouldn't call them safe because Bastion, you can just get so hard countered and Surfetch is so glassy. But like Shadow Dragonair is an interesting one where like I find Shadow Dragonair one of the safest Pokemon in this meta. Again, because there's not as many fairies and ice out there right now in the Great League. But even against like Steels, you're surprised how fast that Dragon Breath and Aqua Tail can actually add up. So those are sort of organizing Pokemon. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on this list. Like there's a top performer section. So if you go to train and go to top performers, it gives you a list of Pokemon that are considered top performers you can organize Great League, Ultra League, Master League. It does give you a good idea of the meta, right? And if you look at the list, if you look at that main list, it's a mixture of like bulky Pokemon with decently spammy charge moves, right? Dugong, Mandibuzz, Trevenant, Chargebug, Lantern, Poliwrath, Gligar. So all kind of bulky Pokemon with decent charge moves. And those are what I do consider some of the safest Pokemon in this meta. You're bulky enough to absorb damage. You are spammy enough that you can provide shield pressure, and then you can dance around matchups and figure out what you want to do there. So those are all the different team ideas. Sorry, I'm going to hide a bunch of these. Okay, I guess we'll start with this one anyways. So what are the different teams that you can build in the Great League meta? So my favorite type of team to use is what I call a balanced team. And basically your balanced team is two Pokemon that cover each other's weaknesses and a safe swap, right? So Azumarill, weak to grass and electric. Venusaur will resist grass and electric. Sableye as your safe swap. Venusaur, weak to fire. Azumarill will beat the fire, right? So it's very kind of straightforward like that. I like these teams because with other ABB style teams and other teams that require a lot of jumping around, this generally does not require a lot of jumping around. It's if you don't have a super hard lead loss, you stay in the matchup. Even some of these like soft losses you can stay in. Some soft losses you can go into like Sableye, but again, in GBL there's like a few things that decide what win, and switch is one of them. So why I don't like ABB is because I really don't want to give up switch unnecessarily if I don't have to, right? Because you just put yourself at a disadvantage in winning there. So something like this, Azumarill, Venusaur cover each other's weaknesses. Sableye is a safe swap. You'll see I like using Sableye a lot. It's the same sort of thing. Whiscash, weak to only has one weakness. Grass. Chargebug, resist the grass. Plus you have the X-Scissor. I mean, Volt Switch is resisted by grass as well, but you have the X-Scissor, which will hit super effective against grass. And Sableye is your safe swap. Quagsire, Lickitung, Skarmory, same sort of thing. Like Quagsire, only weak to grass. Skarmory, double resist grass. Lickitung is your safe swap. I mentioned how earlier when I was going over the rankings there, I said Quagsire, and this is the exact video I was talking about. I used Aqua Tail here. I switched it to Stone Edge because it just gives you better coverage for other Pokemon. It's just generally safe on the lead. Like unless you see a grass Pokemon, it feels like there's no Pokemon, if you're running Stone Edge Mud Bomb, it feels like there's no Pokemon that you can't compete with, right? So that's what I love these type of teams with. What I consider, I guess these are considered, what was the definition? Chargers, what did they call them? with the Chargers on the lead. Yeah, with the Chargers on the lead, right? Safe Pokemon, under the Chargers definition of being able to kind of hit everything on the lead with a safe swap and Skarmory in the back. And I'll go over sort of like balance in Pokemon versus like bulky Pokemon in glass cannons later on when I do that sort of teams down there. Again, these are just very, you can go back and watch any of these videos. Whiscash, Umbreon, Gligar. Umbreon used to be super, like one of the best safe swaps. Not as much anymore with all the fighters, but like still generally pretty good. And just cover your grass weakness with a flyer in the back. I think I have one more in the balance. A9tails, Lantern, Dunsparce. Again, this is an older one because Dunsparce doesn't use much anymore, but like Lantern, weak to grass, Powder Ninetales with the Powder Snows. Where this gets a little... no, I was going to say Lantern's weak to ground, but Ninetales should cover most ground weakness and stuff like that. And then Dunsparce with your sort of like safe swap coverage, only weak to fighting, cover sort of flyers, cover sort of ground, cover steals. Like basically that is how you build a balanced team. So there's a lot of ways, a lot of different Pokemon variations. What I would do is figure out the 2 Pokemon that you think cover each other's weaknesses well, that you know how to use. Look up all the safe swaps and see which one fits in there. And a lot of them fit in pretty well. One strategy, if nothing else is working, is picking 3 of what I consider the safest Pokemon in the meta and throwing them all together. As long as one of them covers the other's weaknesses, you're okay. So this would fall under the consistency Pokemon. No, this would fall under. I don't know if it would fall under any of those headings, realistically. But the way I see it is, these Pokemon are generally so safe in the meta that a lot of the times you don't need to get out of bad matchups. Like Giratina against Fairies, Giratina against like Ice in the Ultra League is still like, you can kind of stay around, and then you have answers other ways, right? So that's why like Stunfisk, weak to fighting, Giratina resists the fighters. Poliwrath weak to electric and grass, Giratina covers that. Giratina is weak to ice, Poliwrath will resist ice. Like it just 3 Pokemon that kind of cover each other's weaknesses. At least one covers the other. 3 Pokemon that are generally very, very strong and safe in the meta. Giratina, Poliwrath, Stunfisk, and the Ultra League can kind of deal with most stuff. Like obviously Stunfisk is going to get killed by Swampert and get killed by fighters. But you'd still, against some fighters, be able to throw at least one Earthquake and chip a bunch. And same path, Poliwrath weak to grass. The Icy Wind is obviously going to be huge there. So I like kind of throwing these teams together because they just feel generally safe and that I can maneuver around. So Azumarill, Gligar, Medi in the Great League. I remember this team had a flaw, something like something like Frostlass in the back. Gligar, Medi against Frostlass would be kind of tough. You can run Psychic to have it a little better matchup there. But same sort of idea, like each of them will kind of cover one weakness. Electric and grass kind of covered by Gligar. Water, Gligar covered by Azumarill. Again, there's no like Medi's weak to Fairy. There's no Fairy answer per se, but Gligar and Azumarill can kind of deal with it. And again, these Pokemon are all just generally, so they're all kind of bulky. They all have that sort of potential shield pressure with like Dig and Play Rough and Dynamic Punch and stuff. So they can kind of all just, they're obviously bad matchups to go against it, but they can still kind of work around a lot of them. I think I have one more example here. Dragonair, Whiscash, Lickitung, right? I said that Lickitung is one of the best safe swaps in the league. Obviously, it's been for years. Whiscash, Whiscald has become so strong in this meta. It's very spammy, very bulky. And then Dragonair, like I said, there's not a lot of fairies. There's not a lot of ice right now running around. So Dragonair is pretty safe in this league. So you got like 3, generally a couple bulky Pokemon in the back, consistency with the Dragon Breath, Dragonair, that you can jump around to a lot of these things. So worst case scenario, like throwing 3 strong Pokemon that kind of fit the bill of like generally safe, somewhat bulky, or have like hard hit, like makes it pretty easy to put a team together like that. I only have one ABB example. I kind of got 2 because the all bulk team has an ABB example. But basically, in ABB, the true ABB is like a grass hole line where you had a Bastiodon on the lead. You safe swap, like it was like Shadow Vic. You pull out a fire that to beat the Shadow Vic. You punish it with the Bastiodon, and then your other grass roams free in the back. So that's like a pure ABB. This is what when I say ABB, it's because if you look at this team, something like Swampert will cause Talonflame and Sandslash problems. So right, so if you safe swap Greedent, because your safe swap Greedent to try and draw out a fighter, Talonflame as a flyer should beat the fighter, and then your second one, Sandslash, roams free. Now Sandslash is double weak to fighting, which is why a team like this works. You draw out a Greedent, you draw out a fighter because Greedent only has one weakness, fighting. So if they have a fighter and you safe swap Greedent, they're gonna use the fighter. And that gets rid of your double weakness of fighter in the back to Sandslash. That being said, Sandslash also is double weak to fire. It is double weak to, is also weak to ground. Right? So and Talonflame kind of deals with those, right? Talonflame can deal with the ground Pokemon, Talonflame can deal with the fire Pokemon. So you kind of have the coverage anyways, but it's not like a pure second normal type in the back where you only have one weakness. There are secondary weaknesses here, but I'm okay calling this like an ABB style team when you're taking out the biggest sort of objective with Greedent and your safe swap. So these teams do require you to pull out a fighter. You cannot, unless you have like the best matchup in the world and they aren't getting out. Like if they have like a Venusaur lead and they're staying in, sure, stay with Talonflame. But if they have like a neutral lead against you, you need to try and draw out a fighter. So you can do one of two ways. You can kind of stay in and throw like a fly. It was easier with Brave Bird before because often you could just go Incinerate, Brave Bird, bail into Greedent. With Flame Charge and Fly, it's a little less like boom and bail. So you can Incinerate and then get into Greedent and bank energy, or you can throw a move and get into Greedent, but you need to get into Greedent to make this team work. I don't like ABB teams. If you've watched the channel for a long time, you know that. I don't like when you have a neutral matchup to have to give up that neutral matchup to lose switch there. But you have to draw out a fighter. And that's why I don't like it. I don't like giving up one of your 3-1 conditions of keeping switch willingly like that. This one is sort of an ABB style team as well, but it's an all bulk team. And it's Defense Deoxys, Lickitung, Dugong. So Lickitung, Dugong weak to fighting. Defense Deoxys has a psychic, will beat pretty much all fighters. There's two things with this team. One is the same thing that I mentioned there, right? You'll draw out a fighter, which Dugong will lose to. But you're still weak to like electric and stuff and grass. The second thing is this team is all bulk. I think when I labeled the team, it was called all bulk. Defense Deoxys, Lickitung, Dugong. You can only run an all bulk team like this if there is some shield pressure associated with it, which you get with these Pokemon, right? So the Icy Wind and Drill Runs don't hurt one off, but Ice Shard is spammy enough that you can get to the Icy Winds and Drill Run enough. Lickitung, Lick does a lot of damage, but the Body Slam spam can add up very quickly. And then Defense Deoxys with a Psycho Boost and Thunderbolt. Often how you play this Defense Deoxys on lead is Psycho Boost does like a good amount of chip in neutral matchups. So you Psycho Boost, you go to 5 counters, which is a great charge move, fast move. You Psycho Boost, which is a good hitting charge move, and then you bail into Lickitung or Dugong. Like either act as safe swap, quite honestly. Lickitung is the safer safe swap because it only has one weakness. So if you're going to run an all bulk team, you can't run a team that doesn't have any charge pressure, right? So you could theoretically run like an all fast move damage team like Bastiodon and a couple others. But when you get into that scenario, if I recognize you're running a fast move damage team and you're like an all bulk team and I don't need to worry about your charge moves, like it allows me to like think about differently how I'm going to play it out. Whereas opposed to these Pokemon, yes, they're all bulky, but these charge moves do add some pressure to like the opponent. So one strategy that I like using is either 1 or 2 bulky Pokemon with a glass cannon or 2 glass cannons and 1 bulky Pokemon. So you can go look at the list again. Think of the glass cannons as Pokemon that need shield. So Shadow Charizard, Swampert, stuff like that. Built around Pokemon that can just absorb damage. So Tapu Fini is not the best example here, but Registeel is obviously one of the best, super bulky. This is Ultra League, so super bulky there. So basically Charizard, use your shields on Charizard, Blast Burn, stuff like that. Registeel, Tapu Fini to absorb, and same thing here. No, this is the. Did I not have? I thought I had one more. I guess I don't have a second example of 2 bulks. But basically, you can use 2 sort of bulky Pokemon just with 1 glass cannon. The same thing applies to what I just said on the last team. You still need some of these bulky Pokemon to apply shield pressure. So like Registeel is like the best example of that fits the bill because it's an Ultra League Pokemon, or I think this is an Ultra League team. Probably not even mine because I do not have a Registeel, but you have a bulky Pokemon with a Focus Blast and Zap Cannon that can really apply shield pressure. You want to get shields down for your Charizard so that your Charizard can just Blast Burn everything, and it has shields in the ending, right? So Registeel absorbs shields and can add charge move pressure. So just having like 2 bulky Pokemon that don't really get shields won't help you in the ending. The last one here is 2 glass cannons mixed with a third shield bulky Pokemon. So Shadow Swampert, Shadow Dragonite, Cresselia, right? You've got 2 shields on your team. If you use any of those 2 shields on Cresselia, you are not playing this team properly, right? Your 2 shields are used for Dragonite, Swampert, and then Cress is used as your essentially third shield. You absorb damage on it, stuff like that. Just because you're using these Pokemon as third shield doesn't mean that they're like that's their only role. Like these Pokemon can still be very good in the Great League and Ultra League. It's just that on this specific team, their role is to absorb damage. So you're saving your shields for Swampert and Dragonite, which Dragonite a lot of fast move pressure, but same thing. Superpower can still get a lot of charge move pressure, and then Swampert is just pure charge move pressure with Hydro Cannon and Earthquake. And the second example, this one can kind of go either way. So like depending on how you define Sandslash. Charizard again is your glass cannon. Jellicent is this is Ultra League. Jellicent is a very tanky, generally safe Pokemon in Ultra League as a safe swap. Just sort of damage there. And then Shadow Sandslash is one of those interesting ones because it's kind of in between, honestly. It's not too glassy unless you go against a counter user and then you're just deleted. But like you can take some charge moves from other things. So it's kind of glassy, but not like a pure glass, like a Charizard type thing. So yeah. And then one thing I forgot to mention, on these teams, if you're 1 or 2 bulky Pokemon with glass cannons, you still got to cover your weakness, right? So Swampert's weakness is grass. You are covering your grass weakness with a Flyer Dragon, which double resist it, right? Charizard, weak to... This seems kind of a little flawed because you're double weak to electric, right? Charizard and Tapu Fini weak to electric. This is at a time when there wasn't a lot of electric Pokemon in the Ultra League. There was like 1 or 2, but they are rarely seen. They're now being seen more. Watch my video on Saturday because I have a double electric team coming on the Ultra League. But yeah, these Pokemon still generally cover each other's weakness, right? So Sandslash weak to ground. Charizard will resist the ground. Charizard weak to water. Jellicent will resist the water. So you still need to, doesn't matter what type of sort of strategy you use in terms of like balanced, all strong team, 1 glass cannon, 2 glass cannons. You still need to keep those fundamentals of you need to cover your weaknesses some way throughout. What I did not have on here is an ABA, because I tried to look at the examples I had in the past, and I don't play ABA a lot. But ABA is basically you have 2 Pokemon with the same typings in the front and the back, with your middle Pokemon covering the weakness. And if you're going to run a team like that, I'll just give you, it's not a perfect example, but I'll give you an example. If you're going to run Swampert as one of your water Pokemon, you need something like a Azumarill or Poliwrath as your other water Pokemon, because you need to lead that Pokemon, and then you have like a Skarmory as your counter. but you need to lead the Poliwrath and Azumarill, and that is because you need to stay in if you see a grass on the lead, right? If you lead Swampert, you're just going to get deleted, right? And if you lead Swampert and then instant swap into your Skarmory, and they have a grass on the lead, they're going to kill your Skarmory with something that covers their grass weakness, and then they're going to have a grass for your 2 water Pokemon. So you can't leave that matchup. So if you're going to run an ABA line with 2 like of the same type of Pokemon, your first typing needs to be able to stay in the bad matchup. So in that example with Swampert, I would build it with Azumarill, or I built it with Poliwrath, because both have ice moves that will cover your grass weakness. So if you see a grass on the lead, you can kind of just stay in and throw that ice move. You'll probably still lose, but you'll be able to chip a ton, eventually get your Skarmory on it. You'll probably soft lose, get your Skarmory on for the rest of them, and then hopefully they don't have a second grass in the bracket for Swampert. So that's sort of the ABA style. And it's one of those where you're pretty much staying in with everything, right? If you're running ABA, you're pretty much not leaving anything, because you should have just generally neutral matchups, or if it's a bad matchup, and your other back Pokemon's weak to it, you have to just stay in. So that's the way ABA works. I don't love using that strategy, which is why you would like I look back through like 6 to 12 months worth of videos just to give pull team examples here, and that was not one of them. And that's for that reason. Like I don't like that strategy. But that is essentially how I team build. If there's any other team sort of strategies that you use, let me know. Again, use your resources, figure out what Pokemon plays what role. Some will play the glass cannon, some will play generally safe Pokemon, some will play the bulky shield type Pokemon. So just understand their role, understand which Pokemon pair together, figure out which strategy you want to use for the team building, and then go from there. But that is essentially how I team build. And I generally consider myself one of the better team builders in GBL. But that is it. Let me know if this video was helpful. Let me know if there's any other videos of this type that you want me to go over. And that is basically it. So we have one more video tomorrow. Don't know what it is yet. And then league turnover 1 week left on Friday. So that is it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.